Tonight, we embark on a journey back to the very dawn of faith, to a time of wandering tribes and whispered promises under starlit skies. We will walk alongside the great patriarchs of old, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and witness the unfolding of a divine plan that would shape the course of history. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below. We love to hear from you. Allow the sound of my voice to be a gentle guide, leading you away from the cares of your day and into the ancient landscapes of the Near East. There is nothing for you to do but to breathe, to relax, and to listen. Let your body grow heavy, your mind become still, and your heart open to the timeless truths woven into these sacred stories. Our story begins not in a grand palace or a bustling city, but in the heart of a man named Abram, who lived in the land of Ur of the Chaldees. It is a story of leaving the familiar behind and stepping out into the unknown, guided only by a voice of promise. It is a story of faith. Now, find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and take a slow, deep breath. Inhale peace and exhale the tensions of the day. Let us begin our journey. In the ancient land of Mesopotamia, nestled between the fertile banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, lay the city of Ur. It was a place of towering ziggurats, bustling marketplaces, and a pantheon of gods whose statues were carved from stone and wood. Here lived a man named Terah, who had 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran was the father of Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldees. Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. They went out together from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. They came to Haran and lived there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. It was in the stillness of this new place, after the passing of his father, that Abram heard a voice that would change his life and the world forever. It was the voice of the one true God, a voice that cut through the clamor of the many idols of his time. Yahweh said to Abram, "Go from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. In you all the families of the earth will be blessed." These words were not a suggestion, but a divine summons. They were a call to leave behind everything that was familiar, the land of his birth, the comfort of his extended family, the very house of his father. In exchange for this great act of obedience, God offered a promise of breathtaking scope, a great nation, a great name, and a blessing that would extend to all the families of the earth. Abram, who was 75 years old when he departed from Haran, did not hesitate. He did not question the voice or demand a sign. He simply obeyed. So Abram went, as Yahweh had spoken to him. Lot went with him. Abram took Sarai his wife, Lot his brother's son, all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they went to go into the land of Canaan. Imagine the scene, a a small caravan of people and livestock, led by a man in his later years, setting out on a journey of hundreds of miles across an arid and often dangerous landscape. They were leaving a settled life for one of nomadic wandering, their only map, the unseen hand of God, their only destination, a land they had never seen. As you settle deeper into a state of rest, picture yourself walking with them. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the dust of the road beneath your feet. Hear the gentle bleating of the sheep and the lowing of the cattle. Sense the quiet determination in Abram's heart, a determination born not of his own strength, but of his trust in the one who had called him. They traveled onward, a slow and steady procession of faith, until they came into the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. The Canaanite was then in the land. It was a land already inhabited, a land of city-states and tribal territories. Yet, it was here, in the heart of this foreign land, that God appeared to Abram again and gave him a further promise. Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, "I will give this land to your offspring." So Abram built an altar there to Yahweh, who had appeared to him. It was an act of worship, a tangible expression of his gratitude and faith. In a land filled with the altars of other gods, Abram's altar stood as a solitary testament to the one who had called him out of darkness and into his marvelous light. From Shechem, he traveled to the mountain on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to Yahweh and called on Yahweh's name. Abram traveled, going on still toward the south. With every step, he was moving further away from his past and deeper into the future that God had prepared for him. Let the rhythm of Abram's journey guide the rhythm of your own breath. With each inhalation, draw in the peace of God's presence. With each exhalation, release any worries or fears that may linger in your mind. Just as Abram entrusted his entire life to God's guidance, so you can entrust your rest to Him tonight. The journey south, however, was not without its trials. The land of Canaan, though promised, was not yet a land of effortless abundance. There was a famine in the land, a severe and testing hunger that gripped the earth and withered the crops. The promise of God was not a shield from hardship, but a source of strength within it. Faced with this challenge, Abram went down into Egypt to live as a foreigner there, for the famine was severe in the land. Egypt, with its mighty Nile River, was a land of plenty, a beacon of hope in a time of scarcity, but it was also a land of powerful and unpredictable rulers, a place where a foreigner was vulnerable. As they approached the borders of this great and ancient kingdom, a fear began to stir in Abram's heart. It was not a fear for his own life, but for the life of his beloved Sarai. He said to Sarai, his wife, "See now, I know that you are a beautiful woman to look at. It will happen that when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' They will kill me, but they will save you alive. Please say that you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that my soul may live because of you." This was a plan born of fear, a moment of human weakness in the midst of a journey of faith. Abram, who had trusted God to lead him out of his homeland, now sought to protect himself through his own cunning. It is a reminder that even the greatest of saints are still human, still prone to fear and doubt. It happened that when Abram had come into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh saw her and praised her to Pharaoh. and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. He dealt well with Abram for her sake. He had sheep, cattle, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. On the surface, Abram's plan had succeeded. He was not only safe, but prosperous. Yet, this prosperity was a hollow one, for he had lost his wife to the house of the most powerful man in the land. He had traded his integrity for security, and the weight of his deception must have rested heavily upon him. But God had not abandoned Abram, even in his moment of faithlessness. The promise was not dependent on Abram's perfection, but on God's faithfulness. Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. The plagues were a divine intervention, a clear and unmistakable sign that Sarai was not to be touched. Pharaoh, realizing that he had been deceived and that he was contending with a power far greater than his own, called Abram and said, "What is this that you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my wife? Now therefore, see your wife, take her, and go your way." Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. So Abram went up out of Egypt, he, his wife, all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. He went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. There Abram called on Yahweh's name. Returning to the place of the altar was a return to a place of faith. It was a moment of rededication, a quiet acknowledgement of his failure, and a renewed commitment to trust in God alone. As you rest tonight, know that you too can always return to that place of faith, no matter how far you may have strayed. God's grace is always waiting to welcome you home. The land that had once seemed so vast and empty was now beginning to feel crowded. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. The land was not able to bear them, that they might live together. For their substance was great, so that they could not live together. There was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanite and the Perizzite lived in the land at that time. The abundance that God had bestowed upon them had become a source of conflict. The shared pastures could no longer support their combined flocks, and the harmony of their journey was threatened by the quarreling of their servants. It was a test of Abram's leadership and his commitment to peace. Abram, whose name means exalted father, lived up to his name in this moment. He approached his nephew Lot, not with anger or accusation, but with a spirit of generosity and reconciliation. He said to Lot, "Please, let there be no strife between me and you, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are relatives. Isn't the whole land before you? Please separate yourself from me. If you go to the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you go to the right hand, then I will go to the left." It was an extraordinary offer. As the elder and the one to whom the promise had been given, Abram had every right to claim the best land for himself. Yet, he entrusted the outcome to God and gave the choice to his younger relative. He valued peace in the family more than personal gain. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zoar. So Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan. Lot traveled east, and they separated themselves from each other. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, and Lot lived in the cities of the plain, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinners against Yahweh. Lot made his choice based on what he could see. He chose the land that looked most like the fertile plains of Egypt, the land that promised the greatest earthly prosperity. In doing so, he pitched his tent toward a city whose wickedness was a stench in the nostrils of God. Abram, on the other hand, was left with the less immediately appealing hill country, but he was also left with the undiminished promise of God. As you listen, let go of the need to strive and to choose based on outward appearances. Rest in the knowledge that God's plan for you is not dependent on your own striving, but on His goodness. He is able to bless you and provide for you, even in the places that seem less promising. After Lot had separated from him, Yahweh said to Abram, "Now, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can count the dust of the earth, then your offspring may also be counted. Arise, walk through the land in its length and in its width, for I will give it to you." In this moment of apparent loss, God met Abram with a renewed and expanded promise. He was not just given a portion of the land, but the entire land, in every direction, as far as his eye could see. And the promise of offspring was made even more vivid, as countless as the dust of the earth. It was a powerful reassurance that what is given away in a spirit of peace is returned by God in even greater measure. Abram moved his tent and came and lived by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to Yahweh. Once again, Abram's response to the promise of God was to build an altar. It was his way of marking the land as holy ground, a place of encounter with the living God. In Hebron, which means communion, Abram found a new place to dwell, a new place to worship, and a new depth of relationship with the God who had called him. Let your mind dwell in this place of communion tonight. Let the peace of Hebron settle over you. You are in the presence of the God who sees you, who knows you, and who has a plan for your life that is far greater than you can imagine. Rest in His love. Rest in His promise. Rest in Him. The peace of Abram's life in Hebron was soon to be disturbed by the echoes of a distant conflict, a conflict that would draw him out of his quiet communion and into the role of a warrior and a rescuer. The story begins in the valley of the Jordan, where Lot had made his home. For 12 years, the kings of the cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, had served a powerful eastern king named Chedorlaomer. But in the 13th year, they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and struck down the mighty and the proud in a great campaign of retribution. They swept through the land, a formidable force, their armies marching under the hot Sunday. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and their allies went out to meet them in battle in the valley of Siddim, which is now the Salt Sea. But the valley was full of tar pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. The victorious eastern kings took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food and went their way. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who lived in Sodom, and his possessions, and departed. The choice that Lot had made with his eyes had led him into the heart of a wicked city, and now it had led him into captivity. One who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner. These were allies of Abram. The news came to Abram in his peaceful encampment, a jarring intrusion of violence and loss. His nephew, his own flesh and blood, was a prisoner of war, being carried away to a distant land. When Abram heard that his relative was taken captive, he led out his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and pursued as far as Dan. This was not a professional army, but a household militia, men who were shepherds and servants, now called to be soldiers. Abram, the man of faith, the builder of altars, now became a man of action, a commander leading a daring rescue mission. He divided himself against them by night, he and his servants, and struck them and pursued them to Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. It was a bold and brilliant strategy, a surprise attack under the cover of darkness that threw the much larger army into confusion. Abram's courage, born of his trust in God, was greater than the enemy's numbers. He brought back all the goods and also brought back his relative Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. The rescuer returned not with spoils of war for himself, but with the people and possessions that had been stolen. He had fought not for conquest, but for family, not for riches, but for righteousness. As Abram returned from this great victory, a strange and wonderful encounter took place. The king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's valley. But before the king of Sodom could speak, another king appeared, a figure of profound and mysterious dignity. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." Abram gave him 1/10 of all. This was an extraordinary moment. Melchizedek, whose name means King of Righteousness, was the king of Salem, the city of peace. He was a priest not of some local deity, but of El Elyon, God Most High, the same God whom Abram worshipped. He came with bread and wine, symbols of sustenance and joy, and he blessed Abram, acknowledging that the victory belonged to God. In response, Abram honored this priest-king with a tithe, 1/10 of all the recovered goods, recognizing his spiritual authority. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people, and take the goods for yourself." It was a tempting offer, the custom of the day. The spoils of war belonged to the victor, but Abram, fresh from his encounter with the priest of God Most High, had a different perspective. His trust was not in the riches of wicked kings, but in the blessing of his God. Is less than Hazon, to one hash is greater than. Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have lifted up my hand to Yahweh, God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread, nor a sandal strap, nor anything that is yours, lest you should say, 'I have made Abram rich.' I will take nothing except that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Enna, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion." Abram refused to be enriched by the king of Sodom. He had sworn an oath to Yahweh, and he would not compromise his integrity for material gain. He wanted it to be known that any blessing he received came from God alone. It was a powerful declaration of dependence and a testament to his character. As the story of this victory and this noble refusal fades into the background, let your mind rest on the quiet strength of Abram. He was a man of peace who could be a warrior when justice demanded it. He was a man of wealth who held his possessions lightly. He was a man of faith whose ultimate trust was in God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth. Allow this same spirit of peaceful trust to settle over you now, a quiet confidence in the God who is your provider, your protector, and your peace. After these things, Yahweh's word came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Don't be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." It was a word of comfort after the conflict, a reassurance that his true protection and provision came not from his own strength or the spoils of war, but from God himself. But in Abram's heart, a question lingered, a deep and unspoken ache. He said, "Lord Yahweh, what will you give me, since I go childless, and he who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus?" Abram said, "Behold, you have given no offspring to me. Behold, one born in my house is my heir." The victory over the kings was a great one, but it could not fill the emptiness in his tent. The promise of a great nation felt distant and abstract when his own arms were empty. He was rich in livestock and silver and gold, but he had no son to carry on his name. Behold, Yahweh's word came to him, saying, "This man will not be your heir, but he who will come out of your own body will be your heir." God's response was direct and unambiguous. The promise would not be fulfilled through an adopted servant, but through a son of his own flesh and blood. Then God brought him outside, under the vast, dark canopy of the Mesopotamian night. He said, "Look now toward the sky and count the stars, if you are able to count them." Abram lifted his eyes to the heavens, to the countless points of light scattered across the darkness like diamond dust. And God said to him, "So your offspring will be." In that moment, under the silent witness of the stars, something shifted in Abram's soul. The promise became as real and as tangible as the sand of the seashore and the stars of the sky. He believed in Yahweh, and he credited it to him for righteousness. It was an act of pure faith, a trust in the promise of God that went beyond all earthly evidence. And this faith, this simple act of believing, was what made him righteous in God's sight. Let this same sense of wonder and peace fill your heart tonight. Imagine yourself standing beside Abram, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Each star is a promise, a reminder of God's infinite power and his unfailing love. There is no need to strive or to worry. Simply rest in the knowledge that the one who created the stars has a plan for you, a plan filled with hope and a future. God said to him, "I am Yahweh who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it." And Abram, seeking a tangible assurance, asked, "Lord Yahweh, how will I know that I will inherit it?" God's answer was not a word, but a ceremony, a solemn and ancient ritual of covenant He said to him, "Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Abram brought him all of these and divided them in the middle and laid each half opposite the other. But he didn't divide the birds. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram. A horror of great darkness fell on him. It was a sacred and terrifying moment, a descent into the mystery of God's presence. And in the darkness, God spoke to him of the future, of the long years of affliction his descendants would face in a land that was not theirs, and of their eventual deliverance with great substance. "Know for sure," God said, "that your offspring will be foreigners in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them. They will afflict them 400 years. I will also judge that nation, whom they will serve. Afterward they will come out with great wealth." It happened that, when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. In that day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your offspring I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates." In this ancient ritual, it was God alone who passed between the divided animals. The smoking furnace and the flaming torch, symbols of his divine presence, moved through the path of the covenant. It was a unilateral promise, a solemn oath that God himself would bear the full responsibility for fulfilling his word. The covenant depended not on Abram's faithfulness, but on God's alone. As you drift deeper into sleep, rest in the security of this unconditional covenant. The God who made this promise to Abram is the same God who watches over you tonight. His love for you is not dependent on your performance, but on his unchanging character. He has bound himself to you with a covenant of grace, and he will never let you go. The covenant was sealed, and the promise was sure, but the years continued to pass, and Sarai, Abram's wife, still bore him no children. The silence in their tent was a constant reminder of the one part of the promise that remained unfulfilled. The weight of her barrenness pressed heavily upon Sarai, and in her desperation, she devised a plan, a human solution to a divine promise. She had a servant, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Sarai said to Abram, "See now, Yahweh has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my servant. It may be that I will obtain children by her." Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. It was the custom of the time, a way for a barren wife to build a family through her handmaiden. But it was a plan born of impatience, a turning away from the simple trust that had been credited to Abram as righteousness. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram her husband to be his wife. He went into Hagar, and she conceived. When she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. The bond between the two women was broken by pride and jealousy. Hagar, now carrying the heir, looked upon her mistress with contempt, and Sarai's plan for a child turned into a source of bitter conflict. Sarai said to Abram, "This wrong is your fault. I gave my servant into your bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Yahweh judge between me and you." Abram, seeking to keep peace in his household, abdicated his responsibility. He said to Sarai, "Behold, your servant is in your hand. Do to her whatever is good in your eyes." Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her face. Hagar fled into the wilderness, a lonely and desperate figure, carrying a child and a heart full of pain. She sought refuge by a fountain of water in the wilderness, on the way to Shur, and it was there, in her moment of deepest despair, that she was met by the angel of Yahweh. The angel said to her, "Hagar, Sarai's servant, where did you come from? Where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from the face of my mistress Sarai." The angel of Yahweh said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hands." It was a difficult command, a call to return to the place of her suffering, but it came with a promise. The angel of Yahweh said to her, "I will greatly multiply your offspring, that they will not be counted for multitude." The angel of Yahweh said to her, "Behold, you are with child and will bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. He will be like a wild donkey among men. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. He will live opposite all his relatives." Ishmael, the name meant God hears. In her affliction, Hagar was not forgotten. God saw her, heard her cry, and gave her a promise for her son. She called the name of Yahweh who spoke to her. "You are a God who sees." For she said, "Have I even stayed alive after seeing him?" Therefore the well was called Beer Lahai Roi, the well of the one who lives and sees me. So Hagar returned, strengthened by this divine encounter. She bore Abram a son. Abram called his son's name, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. A son was born, but he was not the son of the promise. He was the son of human striving, a reminder of the consequences of impatience. Yet, he was also a son under the watchful eye of the God who sees and hears. As you rest in the quiet of this moment, let the story of Hagar bring you comfort. Know that even when you feel lost, alone, or forgotten, you are not outside the loving gaze of God. He is El Roi, the God who sees you. He is the one who hears your affliction. He meets you in your wilderness and offers you a promise and a future. There is no need to flee, no need to hide. Simply rest in his presence and allow his peace to wash over you, wave after gentle wave. 13 more years passed in the land of Canaan. Ishmael grew from a boy into a young man, and the household of Abram was prosperous. Yet, the central promise, the son who was to come from Sarai, remained unfulfilled. The silence of God on this matter had been long, a test of endurance and a quiet invitation to a deeper level of trust. When Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly." The name God used for himself, El Shaddai, God Almighty, was a name of immense power, a reminder that nothing was too hard for him. Abram fell on his face, a posture of profound reverence and awe in the presence of the divine. God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you. You will be the father of a multitude of nations. Your name will no longer be called Abram, but your name will be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations." The changing of his name was a significant and powerful act. Abram, exalted father, became Abraham, father of a multitude. His new name was not just a title, but a declaration of the reality that God was bringing into being. He was being named for the promise, called to live into the identity that God had ordained for him. "I will make you exceedingly fruitful," God continued, "and I will make nations of you. Kings will come out of you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God to you and to your offspring after you. I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land where you are traveling, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. I will be their God." This was a reaffirmation and an expansion of the covenant made so many years before. It was to be an everlasting covenant, a bond between God and this family that would stretch through all generations. And with this covenant came a sign, a physical mark of belonging. God said to Abraham, "As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised." It was to be a permanent sign in their flesh, a constant reminder of the covenant relationship they had with their God. Then God spoke the words that Abraham had been waiting decades to hear, the words that would finally address the deepest longing of his heart. God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but her name will be Sarah. I will bless her, and yes, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she will be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her." Sarai, my princess, became Sarah, princess, or noblewoman to all. Her new name elevated her from a personal treasure to a universal figure, a mother of nations. And the promise was explicit, not just a son, but a son times by her asterisk. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed. It was not the laugh of cynical disbelief, but the laugh of astonished joy, of overwhelming wonder. He said in his heart, "Will a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Will Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?" The sheer impossibility of it from a human perspective was met with the joyful explosion of laughter. Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." It was the plea of a loving father, a desire for his firstborn son to be included in the blessing. God's response was both a confirmation of the specific promise and a tender provision for Ishmael. God said, "No, but Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. You shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He will become the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this set time next year." Isaac, a name that means "he laughs." The name itself would be a perpetual reminder of the joyful laughter that greeted the promise of his birth. The covenant would pass through this promised son, the child of laughter and of a miracle. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. That very same day, Abraham obeyed. He took Ishmael his son, and all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised. Ishmael his son was 13 years old. There was no delay, no hesitation. The sign of the covenant was immediately and completely embraced. As you rest in the stillness of this night, let the story of Abraham's new name and the promise of Isaac wash over you. It is a story of God's perfect timing, of his ability to bring life out of barrenness and joy out of long years of waiting. It is a reminder that his promises are sure, even when they seem impossible. Let go of your own timelines and your own expectations. Trust in the God who is almighty, the one who can do more than you can ask or imagine. Rest in the peace of his presence, and let your heart be filled with the quiet joy of a promise fulfilled. Yahweh appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. The sun was high in the sky, casting sharp shadows on the parched ground. The air was still and heavy. Abraham, now an old man, was resting in the shade of his tent, the quiet rhythm of his breathing, a gentle counterpoint to the silence of the afternoon. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men stood opposite him. They were strangers, travelers on the dusty road, but there was an aura about them, a sense of otherness that caused Abraham to stir from his rest. When he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself to the earth. His response was one of immediate and profound hospitality. In the harsh culture of the desert, a stranger was a sacred trust, a guest to be honored and protected. Abraham, without a moment's hesitation, offered them the best of what he had. He said, "My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please don't go away from your servant. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. I will get a morsel of bread, so you can refresh your heart. After that you may go on, for you have come to your servant." They said, "Do as you have said." Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quickly prepare 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes." Then Abraham ran to the herd and picked out a good and tender calf and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. He took butter, milk, and the calf which he had prepared and set it before them. He stood by them under the tree, and they ate. Imagine the scene: the 3 celestial visitors, their identities veiled in human form, resting in the shade of the ancient oaks. Abraham, the great patriarch, standing attentively, serving them with a humble and generous heart. It is a picture of sacred hospitality, of an earthly welcome extended to heavenly guests. As you relax and breathe deeply, let this spirit of peaceful hospitality fill your own heart. Let go of any need to rush or to strive. Simply be present in this moment, resting in the shade of God's loving care, knowing that you are a welcome and honored guest in his presence. They said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" He said, "See, in the tent." He said, "I will certainly return to you at this time next year. Behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah heard in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age. Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I have grown old, will I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" It was a laugh, not of joyful wonder, but of quiet incredulity. The promise, which had made her husband laugh with astonishment, now made her laugh with doubt. It seemed too good, too impossible to be true. Yahweh said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Will I really bear a child when I am old?' Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the set time I will return to you, in the spring, and Sarah will have a son." The gentle rebuke was a powerful reminder of the one with whom they were dealing. For El Shaddai, God Almighty, the categories of possible and impossible did not apply. Sarah denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh," for she was afraid. He said, "No, but you did laugh." The moment passed, a fleeting instance of human doubt in the face of divine certainty. The promise was reaffirmed, and the laughter, both of joy and of doubt, would soon be fulfilled in the birth of a son. The men rose up from there and looked towards Sodom. Abraham went with them to see them on their way. The meal was over, the visit concluded, but the purpose of their coming was not yet fully revealed. As they walked, a divine deliberation took place. Yahweh said, "Will I hide from Abraham what I am doing, since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed in him? For I have known him, that he may command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of Yahweh, to do righteousness and justice, so that Yahweh may bring on Abraham what he has spoken of him." God chose to bring Abraham into his counsel, to treat him not as a servant, but as a friend. He revealed the terrible purpose of their journey. Yahweh said, "Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see if they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come to me. If not, I will know." The men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before Yahweh. The two companions, now revealed as angels, departed on their mission of judgment, but one remained, Yahweh himself, in the form of a man, and Abraham stood before him, his heart heavy with the fate of the cities of the plain. Abraham came near and said, "Will you consume the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous within the city? Will you consume and not spare the place for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do things like this, to kill the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be like the wicked. Far be it from you. Shouldn't the judge of all the earth do right?" It was a bold and passionate plea, an appeal to the very character of God. Abraham, who had been called to be a blessing to all nations, now began to live out that calling, interceding for a city that was not his own, for a people who were wicked. Yahweh said, "If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake." Abraham answered, "See now, I have taken it on myself to speak to the Lord. Although I am dust and ashes, what if there will lack 5 of the 50 righteous? Will you destroy all the city for lack of 5? He said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." He spoke to him yet again and said, "What if 40 are found there?" He said, "I will not do it for the 40's sake." He said, "Oh, don't let the Lord be angry, and I will speak. What if 30 are found there?" He said, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." He said, "See now, I have taken it on myself to speak to the Lord. What if 20 are found there?" He said, "I will not destroy it for the 20's sake." He said, "Oh, don't let the Lord be angry, and I will speak just once more. What if 10 are found there?" He said, "I will not destroy it for the 10's sake." With each step, Abraham's boldness grew, and with each step, God's mercy was revealed. The negotiation was not a contest of wills, but a revelation of the heart of God, a heart that is patient, merciful, and willing to spare for the sake of even a few. Yahweh went his way as soon as he had finished communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. The conversation was over. The fate of Sodom was sealed, resting on the presence of 10 righteous souls. Abraham returned to his tent, his intercession complete, leaving the outcome in the hands of the Judge of all the earth. As you drift towards sleep, let the image of Abraham, the friend of God, fill your mind. He was a man who walked with God, talked with God, and even wrestled with God in prayer. He was a man whose heart was large enough to care for the fate of a wicked city. Rest in the knowledge that this same God listens to your prayers, that he is a God of justice and of mercy, and that his ear is always open to the cry of your heart. There is no concern too small, no plea too bold. He is the Judge of all the earth, and he will always do right. Sleep now in the peace of his righteous and merciful presence. The 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening. Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose up to meet them. He bowed himself with his face to the earth, and he said, "See now, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house. Stay the night, wash your feet, and you can rise up early and go on your way." He showed the same spirit of hospitality as his uncle Abraham, a sacred duty in a land of strangers. But the city of Sodom was not a place of welcome. Its heart was corrupt, its people given over to wickedness. The men of the city, both old and young, surrounded the house, demanding that Lot bring out his guests so that they might abuse them. It was a terrifying display of depravity, a city consumed by its own sin. Lot, in a desperate and misguided attempt to protect his guests, offered his own daughters instead, a tragic reflection of the brokenness of the culture around him. The men of the city pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door, but the angelic visitors pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. They struck the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, so that they grew weary trying to find the door. The judgment of God was beginning to fall. The angels urged Lot to flee, to gather his family and escape the coming destruction. "For we will destroy this place," they said, "because the cry of them has grown great before Yahweh. Yahweh has sent us to destroy it." Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, but he seemed to them to be joking. They could not comprehend the reality of the coming doom. As the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the iniquity of the city." But he lingered. The life he had built, the possessions he had gathered, held him in their grip. So the men grabbed his hand, his wife's hand, and his 2 daughters' hands, Yahweh being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. "Escape for your life," they commanded. "Don't look behind you, and don't stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be consumed." And so they fled, a small family running from a cataclysm, saved not by their own righteousness, but by the mercy of God and the intercession of Abraham. Then Yahweh rained on Sodom and on Gomorrah sulfur and fire from Yahweh out of the sky. He overthrew those cities, all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew on the ground. But Lot's wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt, a permanent monument to the danger of a divided heart, of looking back with longing at a life that God has called you to leave behind. Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood before Yahweh. He looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and saw, and behold, the smoke of the land went up as the smoke of a furnace. The judgment was complete. The cry of the oppressed had been answered. And in the midst of this terrible destruction, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the middle of the overthrow. Let the solemnity of this story settle over you, not as a source of fear, but as a reminder of the justice and mercy of God. He is a God who does not ignore the cries of the afflicted, and He is a God who remembers His people. Rest in the assurance that you are safe in His care, sheltered from the storms of life, and held fast by His merciful hand. Abraham traveled from there toward the land of the south and lived between Kadesh and Shur. He lived as a foreigner in Gerar. Once again, as he had done in Egypt, Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." His fear of powerful foreign kings led him back to the same deception. Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man, because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." God protected Sarah and warned the pagan king, intervening once more to safeguard the promise. Abimelech, who had acted in the integrity of his heart, pleaded his case, and God instructed him to restore Sarah to her husband, for Abraham was a prophet who would pray for him. Abimelech rose early in the morning, called his servants, and restored Sarah to Abraham, rebuking him for bringing such great guilt upon his kingdom. Abraham, in turn, prayed for Abimelech, and God healed him and his household. It is a story that reminds us, even as we rest, that God's faithfulness is not dependent on our own. He is able to protect His purposes and His people, even in our moments of weakness and fear. And now, the moment of all moments, the culmination of a quarter-century of waiting, had finally arrived. Yahweh visited Sarah as He had said, and Yahweh did to Sarah as He had spoken. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac, the name that meant "he laughs." The sound of laughter, once of doubt and astonishment, now filled the tent of Abraham and Sarah with pure, unadulterated joy. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has made me laugh. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." She added, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age." The shame of her barrenness was washed away in a flood of joyful laughter. The promise was no longer a distant hope, but a living, breathing child in her arms. As you drift into a deep and peaceful sleep, let the sound of Sarah's laughter echo in your heart. It is the laughter of a promise fulfilled, of a long-awaited joy finally realized. It is the laughter of God's faithfulness. Rest in the knowledge that the God of Abraham and Sarah is your God, and He is faithful to His promises. He can bring joy out of sorrow, life out of barrenness, and laughter out of long years of waiting. Sleep now, cradled in the arms of the God who always keeps His word. The child grew and was weaned. Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. It was a celebration of life, a joyous acknowledgement of God's miraculous provision. But in the midst of this joy, a shadow lingered. Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. The presence of Ishmael, the son of the flesh, was a source of friction and a threat to the inheritance of Isaac, the son of the promise. Therefore she said to Abraham, "Cast out this servant and her son, for the son of this servant will not be heir with my son, with Isaac." The thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight on account of his son. He loved Ishmael, and the thought of sending him away was a deep and painful wound. God said to Abraham, "Don't let it be grievous in your sight because of the boy and because of your servant. In all that Sarah says to you, listen to her voice, for your offspring will be named through Isaac. I will also make a nation of the son of the servant, because he is your offspring." God's command affirmed the unique place of Isaac, but it also contained a promise of care for Ishmael. Abraham was called to obey, to trust that God would be faithful to both his sons, even when they were separated. Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and gave her the child and sent her away. She departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. The provisions seemed so small, the future so uncertain. The water in the bottle was soon gone, and she put the boy under one of the shrubs. She went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, about a bow shot away, for she said, "Don't let me see the death of the child." She sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. It was a cry of utter despair, a mother's heart breaking in the desolate wilderness. But God heard the voice of the boy. The angel of God called to Hagar out of the sky and said to her, "What ails you, Hagar? Don't be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Arise, lift up the boy, and hold him in your hand, for I will make him a great nation." God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went, filled the bottle with water, and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew. He lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And now, our story comes to its final and most profound test. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham," he said. "Here I am," he said. "Now take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go into the land of Moriah. Offer him there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you of." There is no command in all of Scripture more stark, more heart-wrenching than this. Every word is a knife, twisting in the heart of a loving father. Your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, the son of laughter, the child of the promise, the focal point of all his hopes and dreams, was now to be laid upon an altar. Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went to the place of which God had told him. There is a terrible and beautiful simplicity in his obedience. There is no record of argument, no plea for mercy, no questioning of God's command. There is only a quiet and resolute trust, a faith that was willing to surrender even the promise itself back to the one who had given it. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place far off. Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go yonder. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." The words, "we will come back to you," are a staggering statement of faith. Even as he walked toward the place of sacrifice, Abraham believed that God would, in some way, restore his son to him. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. He took in his hand the fire and the knife. They both went together. Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, "My father." He said, "Here I am, my son." He said, "Here is the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" The innocent question of the boy must have pierced Abraham's heart more deeply than any knife. Abraham said, "God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they both went on together. The words were a prophecy, a statement of faith that would prove truer than Abraham could ever have imagined. They came to the place which God had told him of. Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar, on the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. In this moment, faith and obedience reached their ultimate expression. Abraham held nothing back. He was willing to surrender everything to the God who had given him everything. The angel of Yahweh called to him out of the sky and said, "Abraham, Abraham." He said, "Here I am." He said, "Don't lay your hand on the boy and don't do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked and saw a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham called the name of that place Yahweh Yireh. Yahweh will provide. As it is said to this day, in Yahweh's mountain it will be provided. On the mountain of the Lord it was provided. The lamb was provided. The substitute was offered. The son was restored. The covenant was confirmed with an oath. The angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time out of the sky and said, "I have sworn by myself, says Yahweh, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your offspring as the stars of the sky, and as the sand which is on the seashore. Your offspring will possess the gate of his enemies. In your offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." And finds for musician. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba. Abraham lived at Beersheba. His journey of faith had brought him to a place of deep and settled peace, a place of communion with the God who provides. As our story of Abraham comes to a close for tonight, let the peace of Yahweh Yireh settle over you. You are held in the hands of the God who provides. He has provided for your every need, and He has provided the ultimate substitute, the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. There is nothing left for you to do but to rest in His provision, to trust in His love, and to allow His peace to carry you into a deep and restful sleep. Sleep now, in the quiet confidence that in the mountain of the Lord, it will always be provided. We hope you have enjoyed this Bible sleep story. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments. We'll be back soon with the next part of our journey through the lives of the patriarchs. Until then, may you rest in the peace of God. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below. We love to hear from you. Hello, and welcome back to our Bible Sleep Story. Tonight, we continue our journey through the lives of the great patriarchs. We have walked with Abraham, the father of faith, from Ur to the land of promise, and witnessed the miraculous birth of Isaac, the son of laughter. Now, our path turns to follow the life of this quiet and gentle son, a life lived in the long shadow of his father, yet marked by its own unique rhythm of faith and faithfulness. Isaac's story is not one of dramatic departures or heroic battles. It is a story of dwelling, of digging wells, of waiting patiently on the Lord. It is a peaceful narrative, a gentle stream that flows between the towering peaks of Abraham's faith and the turbulent waters of Jacob's life. It is a story that invites us to find God not only in the fire and the earthquake, but in the still small voice of a quiet and trusting heart. So, as you settle in tonight, let the peaceful rhythm of Isaac's story guide your own heart into a state of deep and restful calm. There is nothing for you to do but to breathe, to relax, and to listen. Let the cares of your day fade away as we journey back to the ancient encampments of the Negev, to a time of new beginnings and of promises passed from one generation to the next. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and take a slow, deep breath. Inhale the peace of the present moment and exhale any lingering thoughts of the day. Let us rejoin the story. Sarah's life was 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. She died in Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The laughter in the tent of Abraham was silenced. The princess, the mother of the promised son, was gone. Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. It was a time of deep and profound grief, the end of a love story that had spanned a century and had journeyed across the known world. Abraham stood up from before his dead and spoke to the children of Heth, the local inhabitants of the land. "I am a stranger and a foreigner living with you," he said. "Give me a possession of a burial place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight." Though the land was promised to him, he owned not a single foot of it. In his moment of grief, he had to negotiate for a place to lay his beloved wife to rest. The children of Heth answered Abraham, saying, "Hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the best of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb, but that you may bury your dead." They recognized his dignity, his standing as a man blessed by God, and they offered him a place of honor. But Abraham wanted more than just a borrowed tomb. He wanted a possession, a piece of the promised land that would belong to his family forever. He bowed himself down to the people of the land and asked them to entreat Ephron, the son of Zohar, to sell him the cave of Machpelah, which was at the end of his field. Ephron, in a grand gesture of oriental politeness, offered to give Abraham the field and the cave. But Abraham, with quiet dignity, insisted on paying the full price. He would not accept as a gift what he intended to possess as a permanent inheritance. So he weighed out the silver, 400 shekels, according to the standard of the merchants. So the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field, the cave which was in it, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in all of its borders were deeded to Abraham for a possession in the presence of the children of Heth, before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. It was the first piece of the promised land that Abraham would ever own, a place of sorrow that became a place of hope, a down payment on the future inheritance of his descendants. As you rest, let the quiet dignity of Abraham in his grief bring you a sense of peace. He mourned deeply, yet he acted with faith and foresight. He honored his wife in her death, and in so doing, he secured a future for his family. Allow yourself to release any grief or sorrow you may be holding. Give it to the God who is our comfort, and rest in the knowledge that He can turn our places of sorrow into places of hope. Abraham was old, well advanced in age. Yahweh had blessed Abraham in all things. The great patriarch had lived a long and full life, a journey of faith that had taken him from the far-off land of Ur to the very heart of the land of promise. He had seen the birth of the son of laughter, and he had secured a final resting place for his beloved Sarah. Now, only one task remained to secure the future of the covenant. He called his servant, the oldest of his house, who ruled over all that he had. This was likely Eliezer of Damascus, the man who had once been Abraham's heir, now his most trusted and loyal servant. Abraham said to him, "Please put your hand under my thigh. I will make you swear by Yahweh, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live, but you shall go to my country and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son Isaac." It was a solemn oath, a sacred trust. The future of the covenant line depended on finding a wife for Isaac from among their own people, a woman who would share their faith and their calling. The servant understood the weight of this responsibility. He asked, "What if the woman is not willing to follow me to this land? Must I bring your son back to the land from which you came?" Abraham's response was immediate and firm. "Beware that you don't bring my son there again," he said. "Yahweh, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, 'I will give this land to your offspring.' He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. If the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be clear from this my oath. Only you shall not bring my son there again." Abraham's faith was absolute. The God who had called him out of Haran would now guide his servant back to that same land to find a wife for the son of the promise. The journey was not to be a return to the past, but a mission to secure the future. The servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. The servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed, having all good things of his master's in his hand. He arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor, Abraham's brother. It was a long and arduous journey, a caravan of hope traveling across the desert. As you rest, imagine the slow, swaying rhythm of the camels, the vast expanse of the desert, and the quiet trust in the heart of this faithful servant. He made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time that women go out to draw water. His journey had brought him to the right place at the right time. Now he needed a sign, a confirmation that God was indeed guiding his steps. he prayed a simple and specific prayer. Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, he prayed, please give me success today and show kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water. The daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let it happen that the young lady to whom I will say, please let down your pitcher that I may drink, and she will say, drink, and I will also give your camels a drink. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. It was a prayer for a sign of character, a test of generosity and kindness. It was a prayer for a woman with a servant's heart, one who would go above and beyond the call of duty. And before he had finished speaking, the answer to his prayer appeared. Behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher on her shoulder. The young lady was very beautiful to look at, a virgin, neither had any man known her. She went down to the spring, filled her pitcher, and came up. The servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your pitcher. She said, drink, my lord. She hurried and let down her pitcher on her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will also draw for your camels until they have finished drinking. She hurried and emptied her pitcher into the trough and ran again to the well to draw, and drew for all his camels. She did exactly as the servant had prayed, her actions a perfect and immediate answer to his request. The man, wondering at her, held his peace to know whether Yahweh had made his journey prosperous or not. He watched in silent awe as this young woman, with tireless energy and a cheerful heart, watered his 10 thirsty camels, a task of immense effort and generosity. As the camels finished drinking, the man took a gold ring of 1/2 shekel weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold, and said, whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to stay? She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She said moreover to him, we have both straw and feed enough and room to stay in. The answer was more than he could have hoped for. She was not just any woman, but the granddaughter of Abraham's own brother. The man bowed his head and worshipped Yahweh. He said, blessed be Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, Yahweh has led me in the way to the house of my master's relatives. The faithful servant's heart overflowed with gratitude. The hand of God was so clearly evident in every detail of his journey. Let this sense of wonder and gratitude fill your own heart as you drift into sleep. Rest in the knowledge that God is a God of intricate detail, a God who guides our steps and answers our prayers in ways that are far beyond our own imagining. He is a God of loving kindness and of truth, and he will never forsake you. Sleep now in the peaceful assurance that you are being led in the way. The young lady ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. Laban ran out to the man, to the spring. It happened that when he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, this is what the man said to me, he came to the man. Behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. Laban, seeing the evidence of wealth and hearing the story, was quick to offer hospitality. He said, "Come in, you blessed of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and room for the camels." The man came into the house, and Laban ungirded the camels. He gave straw and feed for the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Food was set before him to eat, but the faithful servant would not be distracted from his mission. He said, "I will not eat until I have told my errand." Laban said, "Speak on." The servant began to recount his story, a testimony to the faithfulness of God and the guidance he had received. He spoke of his master Abraham, of his great wealth, and of the son of his old age, Isaac, to whom he had given everything. He told them of the oath he had sworn, and of the prayer he had prayed by the well. "I came today to the spring," he explained, "and said, 'Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are making my way prosperous that I go, behold, I am standing by this spring of water. Let it happen that the maiden who comes out to draw, to whom I will say, "Please give me a little water from your pitcher to drink," and she will say to me, "Drink, and I will also draw for your camels." Let her be the woman whom Yahweh has appointed for my master's son." He recounted how Rebekah had come, even before he had finished speaking, and how she had fulfilled the sign in every detail. "I asked her," he said, "Whose daughter are you?" She said, "The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him." I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her hands. I bowed my head and worshipped Yahweh and blessed Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me in the right way to take my master's brother's daughter for his son. Having laid out the whole story, a clear and undeniable account of divine providence, he put the choice to them directly. "Now if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me," he said, "and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left." Laban and Bethuel answered, "The thing proceeds from Yahweh. We can't speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahweh has spoken." They recognized the hand of God in the matter and gave their immediate consent. It happened that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself down to the earth to Yahweh. He brought out jewels of silver and jewels of gold and clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. They ate and drank, he and the men who were with him, and stayed all night. In the morning, he was eager to return. "Send me away to my master," he said. But her brother and her mother said, "Let the young lady stay with us a few days, at least 10. After that she may go." They were reluctant to part with her so quickly, but the servant was resolute. "Don't hinder me," he said. "Since Yahweh has prospered my way, send me away that I may go to my master." They said, "We will call the young lady and ask her." They called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will go." Her response was simple, direct, and full of faith. She was willing to leave her home, her family, and everything she had ever known, to journey to a new land and marry a man she had never met, all on the strength of the story of God's guidance. They sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant, and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you be the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your offspring possess the gate of those who hate them." Rebekah arose, and her servants, and they rode on the camels and followed the man. The servant took Rebekah and went his way. As the caravan of camels makes its slow and steady way back toward the land of Canaan, let your mind be at peace. The journey of faith is not always a solitary one. Sometimes it is a journey of being led, of trusting the guidance of others, and of moving forward into an unknown future with a simple and willing heart. Rest in the quiet confidence that, like Rebekah, you are being led toward a divine appointment, a future prepared for you by a loving and faithful God. Isaac came from the way of Beer Lahai Roi, for he lived in the land of the south. He had returned to the well of the one who lives and sees me, the place where Hagar had been met by God. It was a place of quiet contemplation, a place to remember the faithfulness of God. Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. He sought a moment of quiet communion with his God. He lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she got down from the camel. She said to the servant, "Who is the man who is walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." She took her veil and covered herself. It was a sign of modesty and respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the sacredness of this first meeting. Is less than Hasson to one hash, is greater than. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. He recounted the story of his journey, of his prayer, and of the remarkable way in which God had led him to Rebekah. Isaac, the quiet man of faith, listened to this story of God's provision for him. Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. He loved her. Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. The emptiness in his heart and in his mother's tent was filled. The son of the promise had found his bride, and the covenant line was secure. The quiet faith of Isaac, who went out to meditate in the field, was met by the willing faith of Rebekah, who said, "I will go," and in their union, the plan of God moved quietly and peacefully forward. Let this sense of peaceful fulfillment wash over you now. The journey may be long, and the waiting may be difficult, but God is always at work, weaving together the threads of our lives to create a beautiful tapestry of His grace. Rest in the comfort that He provides, the comfort that fills the empty places in our hearts and brings us a peace that passes all understanding. Sleep now in the quiet confidence that your story, too, is being guided by a loving and faithful hand. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below. We love to hear from you. Hello, and welcome back to our Bible Sleep Story. We have journeyed with Abraham, the father of faith, and we have rested in the quiet story of Isaac, the son of the promise. Tonight, our path takes a dramatic turn as we follow the life of Jacob, the third great patriarch. His is a story of struggle and striving, of cunning and conflict, of a man who wrestled with his brother, with his father-in-law, and even with God himself. Jacob's story is not a simple or straightforward one. It is a messy and complicated journey, full of human weakness and divine grace. It is the story of a man named Jacob, which means supplanter or heel grabber, who is transformed into a man named Israel, which means he strives with God. It is a story that gives us hope, for it reminds us that God does not call the perfect, but he perfects those whom he calls. He is a God who can take our brokenness and our striving and transform them into a blessing. So, as you settle in for tonight's story, allow your body to relax and your mind to be still. Let go of any struggles or conflicts in your own life and entrust them to the God who can bring peace out of turmoil and strength out of weakness. There is nothing for you to do but to breathe, to listen, and to rest in the assurance that you are held in the hands of a God who is a master of transformation. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and take a slow, deep breath. Inhale the peace of God's presence and exhale any tension you may be holding. Let us begin the story of Jacob. Abraham took another wife, and her name was Keturah. She bore him sons, but Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. To the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts, and he sent them away from Isaac his son, while he yet lived, eastward to the east country. The line of the covenant was clear, and Abraham, in his wisdom, ensured that there would be no dispute over the inheritance. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived, 175 years. Abraham gave up the spirit and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. His sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre, the field which Abraham purchased of the children of Heth. There was Abraham buried, with Sarah his wife. It happened after the death of Abraham that God blessed Isaac his son. Isaac lived by Beer Lahai Roi. Isaac, the heir of the promise, now carried the weight of the covenant. He had been comforted by his love for Rebekah, but their union, like that of his parents, was marked by the pain of barrenness. Rebekah was barren. The promise of a great nation once again seemed to hang by a thread, dependent on a miracle from God. Isaac prayed to Yahweh for his wife, because she was barren. He did not resort to human schemes or cultural customs, as his father had once done with Hagar. He simply and earnestly prayed, and Yahweh was entreated by him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the pregnancy was not a peaceful one. The children struggled together within her. It was a violent and unsettling turmoil, a battle being waged in the very place where life was being formed. She said, "If it is like this, why do I live?" The distress was so great that it brought her to a point of despair. She went to inquire of Yahweh. Yahweh said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples will be separated from your body. The one people will be stronger than the other people. The elder will serve the younger." The struggle within her was a prophecy of the future, a sign of the two nations that would come from her, and of the divine reversal of the natural order. The elder would serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all over like a hairy garment. They named him Esau. After that, his brother came out, and his hand had hold on Esau's heel. He was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. The boys grew. Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Their natures were as different as their appearances. Esau was a man of impulse and appetite, At home in the wild and open spaces, Jacob was a man of quiet contemplation and domesticity, a dweller in the familiar world of the encampment. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his venison. Rebekah loved Jacob. The parental favoritism would become a source of deep and lasting conflict in the family, a crack in the foundation that would lead to deception and heartbreak. One day, Jacob was boiling stew. Esau came in from the field, and he was famished. Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am famished." Therefore his name was called Edom, which means red. Jacob said, "First, sell me your birthright today." It was a calculated and opportunistic demand. Jacob, the quiet man, saw his moment and seized it. He understood the value of the birthright, the double portion of the inheritance, and the spiritual leadership of the family that it represented. He saw that his brother, in his moment of physical hunger, held it lightly. Esau said, "Behold, I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" It was the cry of a man ruled by his immediate desires, a man who could not see beyond the craving of his stomach. He was willing to trade the future for the present, the permanent for the temporary. Jacob said, "Swear to me today." He swore to him. He sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. He ate and drank, rose up, and went his way. So Esau despised his birthright. For a single meal, he traded away his inheritance and his destiny. As you rest tonight, let this story be a gentle reminder of the things that truly matter. In the quiet of your heart, consider the things you value most. Are they things of lasting worth, or are they the fleeting pleasures of the moment? Let go of the striving and the craving. Release the need for immediate gratification. Rest in the peace of knowing that your true inheritance is not something that can be bought or sold, but a gift of grace from a loving God. Sleep now in the quiet contentment of a heart that is satisfied in Him alone. There was a famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. To Gerar, Yahweh appeared to him and said, "Don't go down into Egypt. Live in the land which I will tell you of. Live in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of the sky, and will give to your offspring all these lands. In your offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Isaac lived in Gerar. Like his father before him, he was blessed and prospered in the land. He sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100 times what he planted. Yahweh blessed him. The man grew great and grew more and more until he became very great. He had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great household. The Philistines envied him, and they stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. Isaac, a man of peace, did not strive with them. He departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and lived there. He dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. He called their names after the names by which his father had called them. But the herdsmen of Gerar argued with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he moved on, digging well after well, choosing peace over conflict, until at last he dug a well for which they didn't argue. He called it Rehoboth, which means room, saying, "For now Yahweh has made room for us, and we will be fruitful in the land." From there he went up to Beersheba, the well of the oath, the place of his father's covenant. Yahweh appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Don't be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." He built an altar there and called on the name of Yahweh and pitched his tent there. There Isaac's servants dug a well. His life was a quiet echo of his father's, a peaceful journey of faith marked by altars and wells, by the presence of God and the promise of blessing. Let the peaceful spirit of Isaac be your guide as you sink deeper into rest. Let go of the need to strive and to fight for your place. Trust in the God who makes room for you, who leads you to places of peace and provision. Rest in the quiet confidence that He is with you, and you have nothing to fear. It happened that when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his elder son, and said to him, "My son?" He said to him, "Here I am." He said, "See now, I am old. I don't know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field, and hunt me venison. Make me savory food, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, and that my soul may bless you before I die." The time had come for the passing on of the patriarchal blessing, a powerful, prophetic word that would shape the destiny of his sons. Isaac, in his love for Esau and his savory food, intended to give this blessing to his firstborn, the son of the field. Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. Rebekah, whose love for Jacob was as strong as Isaac's was for Esau, saw her opportunity to secure the blessing for her favored son. She remembered the prophecy from long ago that the elder would serve the younger, and she determined to bring it about through her own cunning. She spoke to Jacob her son, saying, "Behold, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, 'Bring me venison and make me savory food, that I may eat and bless you before Yahweh before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command you. Go now to the flock, and get me 2 good young goats from there. I will make them savory food for your father, such as he loves. You shall bring it to your father, that he may eat, so that he may bless you before his death." It was a plan of audacious deception, a conspiracy to steal the blessing. Jacob, though a quiet man, was not without a conscience. He hesitated, not because of the morality of the act, but because of the risk of being caught. He said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father might feel me, and I will seem to him as a deceiver, and I will bring a curse on myself, and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me." She took the full responsibility for the deception, her fierce love for her son overriding all other considerations. So he went and got them and brought them to his mother. His mother made savory food, such as his father loved. Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her elder son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. She put the skins of the young goats on his hands, and on the smooth of his neck. She gave the savory food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. The disguise was complete. The stage was set for a tragedy of deception. He came to his father and said, "My father." He said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done what you asked me to do. Please arise, sit, and eat of my venison, that your soul may bless me." The lie was spoken, the deception begun. Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He said, "Because Yahweh your God gave me success." The name of God was invoked to sanctify the lie, a chilling addition to the growing web of deceit. Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not." Jacob went near to Isaac his father. He felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He didn't recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He said, "I am." He said, "Bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless you." He brought it near to him, and he ate. He brought him wine, and he drank. His father Isaac said to him, "Come near now, and kiss me, my son." He came near and kissed him. He smelled the smell of his clothing and blessed him. "Behold," he said, "the smell of my son is as the smell of a field which Yahweh has blessed. God give you of the dew of the sky, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and new wine. Let peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." The blessing was spoken, the powerful, irrevocable word of the patriarch. It was a blessing of prosperity, of power, and of preeminence, and it had been stolen. As you listen to this story of human brokenness and striving, do not let it trouble your heart. Instead, let it be a reminder of the sovereign grace of God, a God who can work his purposes even through our failures and our deceptions. He is not limited by our weakness. He is not thwarted by our sin. He is a God who can take the crooked lines of our lives and use them to draw a straight line of his grace. Rest in that grace tonight. Let go of your own striving, your own deceptions, your own fears. Place them all in the hands of the God who sees, who knows, and who can redeem all things. Sleep now in the peace of his sovereign and transforming love. It happened as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had just gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also had made savory food and brought it to his father. He said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that your soul may bless me." Isaac his father said to him, "Who are you?" He said, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, "Who then is he who has hunted venison and brought it to me? And I have eaten of all before you came, and have blessed him. Yes, and he will be blessed." The full weight of the deception fell upon the old man, and he trembled with a mixture of shock, grief, and a dawning understanding of the irrevocable power of the word he had spoken. The blessing, once given, could not be taken back. When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, my father." He said, "Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing." He said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright. See, now he has taken away my blessing." He said, "Haven't you reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "Behold, I have made him your lord, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. With grain and new wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" The primary blessing was gone, given away in a moment of blindness and deception. All that was left were the crumbs from the table. Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, my father." Esau lifted up his voice and wept. It was the cry of a man who had despised his birthright, but who now felt the full and bitter weight of its loss. Isaac, his father, answered him, "Behold, your dwelling will be of the fatness of the earth and of the dew of the sky from above. By your sword you will live, and you will serve your brother. It will happen, when you grow restless, that you will break his yoke from off your neck." It was a blessing of struggle and conflict, a life of violence and eventual, hard-won freedom. The harmony of the family was shattered. The prophecy of the 2 nations at war with each other, set in motion by this act of domestic treachery. Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." The stolen blessing had borne its bitter fruit, a deep and murderous hatred that would divide the 2 brothers for decades to come. As you rest in the quiet of this night, let the sorrow of this broken family fade into the background. It is a story of human failing, of greed and deception, of favoritism and hatred. But it is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a long and winding road of redemption. Let go of any brokenness or conflict in your own life. Place it in the hands of the God who can heal and restore, and rest in the peace that comes from knowing that even in our darkest moments, He has not abandoned us. The words of Esau were told to Rebekah. She sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban my brother in Haran. Stay with him a few days, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and get you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day?" Rebekah, the architect of the deception, now acted to save her son from its consequences. Her plan was for a short-term solution, a brief exile until the storm of Esau's anger had passed. She could not have known that it would be more than 20 years before she would see her beloved son again, if ever. Rebekah said to Isaac, "I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife of the daughters of Heth, such as these, of the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me?" She used this complaint as a pretext to persuade Isaac to send Jacob away, veiling her fear of Esau's wrath behind a concern for Jacob's future marriage. Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel your mother's father. Take a wife from there from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be a company of peoples, and give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may inherit the land of your travels, which God gave to Abraham." Isaac sent Jacob away. He went to Padan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. So Jacob, the supplanter, the heel grabber, became Jacob the fugitive. He left his home with nothing but a staff in his hand and a blessing on his head. He was fleeing from the consequences of his own sin, yet he was also being sent out under the blessing of his father and the promise of God. It was a journey of exile and of hope, of running away and of being sent forth. He went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. He took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. He was alone, a solitary figure in the vast and empty wilderness, with a stone for a pillow and the star-filled sky for a blanket. He dreamed, behold, a stairway set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. Behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. It was a bridge between heaven and earth, a vision of the constant and busy traffic between the realm of God and the world of men. And at the top of this celestial stairway, Jacob saw the one who had called his grandfather out of Haran so many years before. Behold, Yahweh stood above it and said, "I am Yahweh, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. I will give the land you lie on to you, and to your offspring. Your offspring will be as the dust of the earth, and you will spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. In you and in your offspring, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you again into this land. For I will not leave you until I have done that which I have spoken of you." In his moment of greatest loneliness and vulnerability, Jacob was met with the unconditional promise of God. The blessing of Abraham was confirmed to him, not because he had earned it or deserved it, but because of the sovereign grace of God. He was promised the land, a multitude of offspring, and a blessing that would extend to the whole world. And most importantly, he was promised the personal and abiding presence of God. "Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go." Jacob awakened out of his sleep, and he said, "Surely Yahweh is in this place, and I didn't know it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than God's house, and this is the gate of heaven." The ordinary and desolate place had been transformed into a sanctuary, a place of divine encounter. Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on its top. He called the name of that place Bethel, which means house of God. He made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then Yahweh will be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar will be God's house. Of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you." It was a conditional vow, the bargaining of a man who was still learning to trust. Yet, it was also a response of faith, an acknowledgement of the God who had met him in the wilderness, and a promise of future worship and gratitude. The fugitive had found his God, and his journey of exile was now a pilgrimage of promise. As you drift into a deep and peaceful sleep, let the vision of Bethel fill your heart. You are not alone. The God of Jacob is with you wherever you go. There is a stairway between heaven and earth, and the angels of God are ascending and descending with messages of grace and protection for you. Rest in the awesome and comforting presence of the God who turns our lonely places into sanctuaries, our stones of hardship into pillars of remembrance. He will not leave you. He will keep you. He will bring you home in peace. Sleep now in the house of God, at the very gate of heaven. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the children of the east. His heart, once heavy with fear and loneliness, was now filled with a quiet sense of purpose and the comforting assurance of God's presence. The stone that had been his pillow was now a pillar of promise, and the empty wilderness was now the house of God. He was no longer a fugitive, but a pilgrim, walking in the light of a divine calling. He looked and saw a well in the field. Behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there by it, for out of that well they watered the flocks. The stone on the well's mouth was large. There all the flocks were gathered. They rolled the stone from the well's mouth, watered the sheep, and put the stone again on the well's mouth in its place. It was a place of gathering, a place of community, a stark contrast to the lonely wilderness from which he had just come. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. See, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still the middle of the day, not time that the livestock should be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them." They said, "We can't until all the flocks are gathered together," and they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. The custom of the place required a collective effort, a waiting for the community to assemble before the life-giving water could be accessed. While he was yet speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. It happened that when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother, Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban his mother's brother. In a single, decisive act of strength and service, he did what the other shepherds were waiting for the community to do. His heart, moved by the sight of his kinswoman, propelled him into action. Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. It was a release of all the pent-up emotion of his long and lonely journey. It was the joy of arrival, the relief of finding his family, and perhaps the dawning of a new and tender love. He told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. She ran and told her father. It happened that when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. He told Laban all these things. Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." He lived with him for a month. The fugitive had found a home, the wanderer a place of welcome. As you rest in the peace of this moment, Let the image of the well be a source of comfort to you. It is a place of meeting, a place of provision, a place where the waiting is over and the journey finds its purpose. Rest in the knowledge that God will lead you to your own wells of refreshment and community. He will roll away the stones that block your path and provide the living water that your soul longs for. Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what will your wages be?" It was a fair question, but one that would lead to a long and complicated entanglement. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful in form and beautiful to look at. Jacob loved Rachel. He said, "I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." It was an extraordinary offer, a testament to the depth of his love. He was willing to bind himself in servitude for the better part of a decade for the woman who had captured his heart at the well. Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me." Laban, the shrewd bargainer, recognized a good deal when he saw one. He secured 7 years of labor from a strong and capable relative in exchange for his younger daughter. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. They seemed to him but a few days for the love he had for her. His labor was lightened by love, his servitude sweetened by the promise of his beloved. It is a beautiful picture of how love can transform our burdens into blessings, our long years of waiting into fleeting moments of joyful anticipation. Let this same love lighten your heart tonight. Rest in the love of the God who has served you, who has given everything for you. Let his love transform your own waiting and your own labors into a joyful journey of hope. There is no burden too heavy, no night too long, when you are held in the arms of his everlasting love. Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her." Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. It was a time of celebration, the culmination of 7 long years of labor, but the celebration was a mask for a cruel deception. It happened in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him. He went in to her in the darkness of the wedding tent, under the veil of custom and the haze of celebration. The deceiver was deceived, the supplanter was supplanted. The man who had tricked his own father with a disguise of animal skins was now tricked by a veiled bride. It happened in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. He said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Didn't I serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" The bitter taste of his own medicine was a harsh and painful lesson. He was now the victim of the same kind of cunning he had used to his own advantage. Laban said, "It is not so done in our place, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you will serve with me yet 7 other years." It was a lame excuse and a ruthless bargain. Laban used the customs of his country to justify his deceit and to bind Jacob to another 7 years of labor. Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. He gave him Rachel, his daughter, as his wife. He went in also to Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served with him yet 7 other years. His family was now a complex and painful web of rivalry and unrequited love. He had the wife he had longed for, but at the cost of a 2nd term of servitude and a lifetime of domestic strife. Yahweh saw that Leah was hated, and he opened her womb. but Rachel was barren. God, in His mercy, saw the pain of the unloved wife and blessed her with children. Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben, for she said, "Because Yahweh has seen my affliction, for now my husband will love me." She conceived again and bore a son, and said, "Because Yahweh has heard that I am hated, He has therefore given me this son also." She named him Simeon. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, "Now this time will my husband be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." Therefore his name was called Levi. She conceived again and bore a son, and she said, "This time I will praise Yahweh." Therefore she named him Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Each name was a cry of the heart, a longing for love, a flicker of hope, and finally, a surrender to praise. But Rachel remained barren, and her heart was filled with envy for her sister. The rivalry that had begun in their father's house now intensified in their shared husband's tent. As you listen to this story of tangled relationships and human pain, do not let it disturb your peace. Instead, see in it the gentle and compassionate hand of God, who hears the cries of the hated and sees the affliction of the forgotten. He is a God who enters into our messy and broken lives, and who works His purposes of grace in the midst of our pain. Rest in His compassion tonight. Let His love be a balm to your soul, and His peace a quiet blanket for your mind. Sleep now in the care of the God who sees, who hears, and who never forsakes His children. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or else I will die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in God's place, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" The pain of their shared barrenness, which could have united them, instead became a source of conflict and accusation. Rachel, in her desperation, resorted to the same solution that Sarah had used so many years before. She gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, that she might have children through her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Rachel named him Dan, saying, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice." She conceived again, and bore a second son, whom she named Naphtali, "my wrestling," for she said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and have prevailed." When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah her servant, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah bore Jacob a son, whom Leah named Gad, good fortune. She bore a second son, whom she named Asher, happy, for she said, "Happy am I, for the daughters will call me happy." The competition for children, for love, for status, had turned the family into a battlefield of names and of wombs. Then, in a strange and poignant episode involving mandrakes, a plant believed to be an aid to fertility, Leah bargained with Rachel for a night with their husband, and she conceived again. She bore a fifth son, Issachar, Hire, and a sixth, Zebulun, dwelling. Finally, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. And then, after all the years of striving and wrestling, of envy and of tears, God remembered Rachel. God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away my reproach." She named him Joseph, saying, "Yahweh add to me another son." Joseph, the son of her old age, the long-awaited child of his beloved wife, would become the focal point of Jacob's love and the catalyst for the next chapter of the family's tumultuous story. It happened when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service with which I have served you." 20 years had passed. The fugitive had become a husband and a father, the head of a large and growing family. The longing for home, for the land of promise, was stirring in his heart once more. Laban, who had been greatly enriched by Jacob's presence, was reluctant to let him go. "If now I have found favor in your eyes," he said, "stay, for I have divined that Yahweh has blessed me for your sake." He urged Jacob to name his wages, to set a price for his continued service. Jacob, who had learned much about cunning and bargaining during his years with Laban, proposed a clever plan. He would take as his wages all the speckled, spotted, and dark-colored animals from Laban's flocks. Laban, thinking this would be a small number, readily agreed, but Jacob, using a combination of folk animal husbandry and divine blessing, ensured that the strongest and healthiest animals produced speckled and spotted offspring. The man's flocks increased exceedingly, and he had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. But his prosperity came at a cost. He heard the words of Laban's sons saying, "Jacob has taken away all that was our father's." He saw Laban's face, and behold, it was not toward him as before. The envy and resentment that had driven him from his own home were now rising against him in the house of his father-in-law. The time had come to leave. Yahweh said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." The command that had set him on his journey 20 years before was now the command that would lead him home. He called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock and laid out his case before them. He spoke of their father's deceit, of how he had changed his wages 10 times, and of how God had protected him and blessed him. He told them of his dream, of the angel of God who had instructed him in the breeding of the flocks, and who had identified himself as the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar, where you vowed a vow to me. The memory of that first divine encounter, the promise of God's presence and protection, had been the anchor of his soul through all the long years of his exile. Rachel and Leah, who had also felt the sting of their father's greed, readily agreed to go with him. "Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house?" they asked. "Aren't we accounted by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has also quite devoured our money." Their loyalty was now fully with their husband and their new family. So Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives on the camels, and he carried away all his livestock and all his goods which he had gotten to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. He stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he didn't tell him that he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had. He rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the mountain of Gilead. As Jacob and his great caravan make their way back toward the promised land, let your own heart be filled with a sense of peaceful anticipation. The journey home can be long and fraught with challenges, but it is a journey guided by the hand of God. Rest in the knowledge that the God of Bethel is with you, that he has seen your struggles, and that he is leading you toward a place of rest and of promise. Laban, upon discovering Jacob's departure, pursued him with a company of his relatives, catching up to him in the mountain of Gilead. He was filled with anger, but God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream of the night and said to him, "Be careful that you don't speak to Jacob either good or bad." The hand of God was a shield around Jacob, protecting him from the wrath of his father-in-law. Their confrontation was a tense one, a mixture of accusation and self-justification. But in the end, they made a covenant, a pact of peace. They gathered stones and made a heap, a witness between them that they would not pass over to each other for harm. They called it Gilead, the heap of witness. They shared a meal, and in the morning, Laban kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them, and departed. The long and complicated chapter of Jacob's life in Haran was finally over. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When he saw them, Jacob said, "This is God's camp." He called the name of that place Mahanaim, which means 2 camps. He was not alone. His own camp was surrounded and protected by the camp of God. But one final and terrifying encounter lay before him. He was approaching the land of Seir, the country of Edom, the home of his brother Esau. The memory of his deception and of Esau's murderous hatred had haunted him for 20 years. He sent messengers before him to his brother with a message of peace and deference. "I have lived with Laban and stayed until now," the message said. "I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight." The messengers returned with terrifying news. "We came to your brother Esau. He is also coming to meet you, and 400 men with him." It was an army, a force that could easily overwhelm Jacob's camp. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. The old fear, the guilt of his past, rose up to choke him. He divided his people and his flocks into 2 camps, hoping that if one was attacked, the other might escape. And then, in his moment of deepest fear, he prayed. It was not the bargaining prayer of Bethel, but the desperate, heartfelt plea of a man who knew he was utterly dependent on God. "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac," he prayed, "Yahweh, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will do you good.' I am not worthy of the least of all the loving kindnesses and of all the truth which you have shown to your servant. For with just my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me, the mother, with the children. You said, 'I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which can't be numbered for multitude.'" He sent a great present of goats and sheep and camels and cattle and donkeys on ahead of him, a wave of tribute to appease his brother's anger. He sent his family across the brook Jabbok, and he was left alone. And in the darkness of that night, a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. It was a strange and mysterious struggle, a physical and spiritual battle that would change him forever. When the man saw that he didn't prevail against him, he touched the socket of his thigh, and the socket of Jacob's thigh was strained as he wrestled with him. The man said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man who had once stolen a blessing now wrestled for one, clinging with desperate faith to this divine antagonist. He said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." He said, "Your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have fought with God and with men, and have prevailed." The supplanter had become a prince of God. The heel grabber had become one who strives with God. His new name was a mark of his transformation, a testament to his tenacious faith. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, the face of God, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." He passed over Peniel, and the sun rose on him, and he was limping because of his thigh. He was a changed man, a man who walked with a limp and a blessing, a man who had seen the face of God and had lived. Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and with him 400 men. He bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. The 20 years of bitterness and hatred were washed away in a flood of tears. The brother who had been feared as an avenger came as a forgiver. The reunion that had been dreaded as a battle became a scene of grace. As our story comes to a close, let the image of Jacob at Peniel be your final thought. He was a man who wrestled with God and who walked away with a limp and a blessing. His limp was a reminder of his weakness, a sign that his strength came not from himself, but from God. His blessing was a reminder of God's grace, a sign that his new identity was a gift, not an achievement. As you sleep tonight, you can release your own struggles. You don't have to wrestle for God's blessing. It is freely given. You don't have to fear the encounters that lie before you. The God who was with Jacob is with you. He has seen you face to face, and he has called you by a new name. You are his beloved child. Rest in that knowledge. Rest in his grace. Rest in his peace. Sleep now, and let the God of Israel be your strength and your salvation. We hope you have enjoyed this Bible sleep story. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments. We have now completed our journey through the lives of the patriarchs. We pray that these stories have brought you peace, comfort, and a deeper sense of God's faithfulness. Until we meet again, may you rest in the arms of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,